Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Integrated Marketing. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm delivering today's online webinar on traditional lands of Kaurna people and that we pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. I have some exciting news to share with you all today in relation to being able to initiate applied learning. We've invited the CEO of Market Ease. His name is Ben Angwing. He was the recipient of the under 40 years of age business entrepreneur in South Australia, and he runs Market Ease, which is a digital technology company adding value to consumers by enabling them to use analytics in the online environment to be able to reach their consumers, and he looks after many super brands. So he will be attending our one of my internal classes within his availability on Wednesday, the 15th of April. That's this week on Wednesday between 12:15 and 2 o'clock, and he will share with you his perspectives in terms of being a successful graduate, so that you're ready for employment and you've got the best skills to be able to consider how your current attributes are reflected in what today's CEOs for business and marketing organizations are looking for in graduates. Relatively, we also understand the competitiveness of the market with regards to artificial intelligence, and accordingly he will highlight to our final year students the importance of where human graduates far exceed the abilities of being replaceable. So please join us in person on Wednesday the 15th of April in my tutorial class, which is in the Jeffrey Smart Building, Level 4, Room 11. So that's Jeffrey Smart Building, Level 4, Room 11 on Wednesday the 15th of April. One of the recent posts that the CEO, Ben Angwing, has recently posted that caught my eye in relation to the skills that you're acquiring, which are lifelong skills in this particular course, also teaching you the resilience of being able to be responsible and accountable for analysing a market and then formulating business and marketing decisions in a very informed way with the conversion of data into information through that systematic process of identifying patterns or observational data that exists over the long term, so longitudinal data. So please do take the time out to join us on Wednesday at 12:15 this week in the Jeffrey Smart Room, Level 4, Room 11. Now, also, please come dressed to impress. So you're no longer a final year student. It's a great opportunity for you to be able to network and make sure that you have the opportunity to sell your personal brand. So be proud of the organization that you work for. Can I ask that you think about that attention to detail? So if you're working for or have been employed by firms Amazing Cars, Cool Cars, Best Motor Works, Driven Motorco, or Efficient Motors, that you consider how you may want to dress up, possibly even as a team, if you're about to meet the CEO of another organization, and how you're going to leave an impression that becomes an asset that's a distinctive asset, something that's memorable, so that when Benang walks away from the class that day, there are cues that will enable him to recall yourself as a personal brand, but also possibly the company that you've been assigned to work for the study period in integrated marketing this semester. So where we're at now is that the simulation is what we call is frozen. Frozen being that you have access to from the start up to ending year 5 decision-making round. That's 5 years worth of data. Now, whether that's 5 years worth of data about your own existing product, if you have an existing product that was assigned for you to manage, or it could have been you've got access to data that may have comprised 3 to 4 years worth of company level data, which enabled you to collate that information and identify opportunities as to what aided your decision, or what was the rationale behind your decision to choose the new vehicle class that you chose and to launch it into the particular micro segment or consumer group that you chose to launch it into. Either way, that would have had to be a very robust decision that you would have had to make in order to spend and invest multi-billions of dollars of the organization's investment in order to choose the new product that you launched into the market. So please make sure that this product level marketing plan, which now the simulation has frozen, what we did was at the beginning, when we made decisions for round 1 and 2, after those first 2 years, we gave you an opportunity to come together, group together as your company and formulate common denominators, which common denominators is like the corporate strategic focus. You're not operating in a group whereby each person is given a function and you staple it all together. You're now operating at the higher team-based marketing environment in terms of the end result that you produce. The output that you produce is going to be way more than the individual compilation of any one of you added up together. So if your team is comprised of, say, 3 people, the sum of 3 in group work is equal to 3. But in integrated marketing with team-based learning at the high advanced level, 3 plus 3 is equal to definitely more than over 3. So the sum of 3 plus 3, the sum of the 3 individuals working together is definitely more than 3. That's what we call team-based learning at the high end level. Your end result in order to achieve the corporate strategic focus is much more than any of the individuals put together. So we formulated corporate strategic focus. We went through, drafted a vision, which is basically the overarching forest that no individual possibly themselves can see, but it's the passion of the organization and the purpose of existence and the people that you serve, which culminates the vision of this organization. And then from there, we ask you to consider, all right, with this big, hairy, audacious goal, how are you going to be able to have some streams or pathways in order to get from one side of the forest to the other side? Because if you don't know what direction you're going to take, then realistically, any direction is going to be a correct decision, right? We also know that if you don't plan, then ultimately be prepared to plan to fail. And that is something that carries through in this particular course right from day one as well, that the planning and preparation is what is going to equip you with the contingency to react faster than competition. So you had the opportunity to formulate your corporate strategic focus. You had mission statements or threads which lead to achievement of those of the vision, and then under the mission statement, so the mission statements could have been something to do with your people, could have been something to do with your technology, something to do with your financial stability, could have been something to do with the environment or eco-friendly. However, what's important, what are the most important factors that will become pathways to help you be able to reach that purposeful vision that you've created? And then there has to be actions, SMART objectives, specific key assessment, key performance indicators that you're going to be using to measure yourself in terms of performance. They need to be attainable, relevant, and particularly at the time we were looking at the time framing, possibly up to end of year 5. you will get the results for your corporate strategic focus back within the next 24 hours. So the result from your corporate strategic focus will now sit inside section 2 of your individual product level marketing plan. Now, what's important to understand here is the simulation. Now that you've made decisions for years 3, 4, and 5, that's ultimately practice rounds of 5 opportunities to trial and error, practice. We all have a different style of learning. Some of us were very quick off the blocks. Given those practice rounds, we were able to pick up very quickly and run a very fast race at the start. Others have taken their time to learn, divide up the work, and took a slower pace towards learning, while there are still 1 or 2 teams learning through trial and error. Now, there is actually not one method that's the correct learning method. It is actually looking at yourself as a personal performer, and each week looking at where did I start and where am I at now. Particularly now that we're more than halfway through the course, it's a really good opportunity for you to best learn by being your own teacher. And what I mean by that is saying, if you were a mentor for integrated marketing, so if you were a peer mentor that I've invited back into the course for integrated marketing, what advice would you give to a completely brand new integrated marketing student stepping into this course? Given all the resources that you were given all the team members that you were given, which are elements outside of your control, how do you think, without being spoon-fed, that you could have grasped understanding of the simulation with more effective purpose? How could you have done it better? What tips would you give to a new person undertaking integrated marketing? Now, when you reflect on that process, which is what we've had over the last 8 weeks, then you'll come to realize that between the teaching team, myself, David, and Oliver, we've tried to include as much feedback from students as possible to provide as much resources in order to aid your decision making when it comes to secondary information, then primary level information, and then guidance along the way without giving you answers. And it's really important that you understand that we are not here to give you answers in integrated marketing. This is an experiential course, and a part of our job is to ensure that you're going to have the coping mechanisms and the grit to be able to harness the resilience of being able to problem solve irrespective of the problem that you face, because that's the reality of real world business and marketing. The reality is that you're not going to get an employer or a boss that's going to be giving you spoon-fed answers. Given the resources that you have, the people that you're going to work with, the industry that you work for, the time horizon that you'll be working in, and possibly the country that you'll be working in, will all affect your ability to be able to problem solve and bring the best possible output or result for your employer. And whether that employer is yourself, being self-employed, or being employed by someone else, it's your ability to demonstrate initiative, the resilience to cope and work in an environment by doing the best that you can and improving on what you did last week in terms of business and marketing performance, because that's all that anyone can ask of you. So for those students that are still informing me, which is only a couple of teams, that you're still very using the term confused about the simulation, what you need to have a look at is reflect on the last 8 weeks and narrow down on exactly what part you're confused about. Because confusion is just your mental capacity saying to you that you're resisting new information. Have you done the research and the readings that's necessary to better able to understand what you're doing? Because now that we're into end of round 5, you've only got 3 rounds left after the study period break. So trial and error at this point, it doesn't really work anymore. We're not dealing with business and marketing decisions that's like a game of snakes and ladders. We're dealing with one where your grade will depend upon your ability to rationalize and justify and defend the business and marketing decisions that you make. Now, if the external market environment that was outside of your control, such as team members not participating or contributing towards their fair share, or the economic news has informed that there are factors that are outside of your control in the economy, or organizational resources were scarce, and the profile of the organization just didn't enable you to be able to respond accordingly, or that there were industry factors like an economic crisis that happened, so that although despite all efforts on your part to make the best possible product that you can to service your valued your micro segment, your product contribution margin was still going the other way. You could still produce a very high quality marketing plan by defending your decisions. So your decisions, if I can revert back to the original slide about the CEO talking about making evidence-based informed decisions based on data and not making a confident guess, this is exactly what we're referring to. Even if the results aren't your way, they need to be justified with the data and the observational evidence that you've contributed towards making informed efforts along the way, and it hasn't just been making confident guesses. So trial and error at this point isn't an excuse anymore, because relatively across the profile of 100 students, if you're still using trial and error, then that means that there are resources given within the course that you have not delved into. You've only taken surface level learning, which is okay for the first 4 weeks of the course, but now it's not okay anymore. So really have a reflection on that to see and use this opportunity of the study period break and this final week of week 8 in order to ensure that you are well equipped to be able to write up your marketing plan. And please start early. If you procrastinate on this marketing plan, so the marketing plan is a projection of recommendations for pricing, product, placement and promotion, which are the 4 Ps within context of the organizational resources for years 6, 7 and 8. They're years that have not yet happened. So that's where you're headed to for your individual marketing plan. You're writing a product plan, which is section 4 for years 6, 7 and 8. Extensions are not allowable for the marketing plan. I have received a couple of emails from students informing of illness, informing of other situations. Now, within context of the course, it's an experiential course, it's real world learning. So the simulation is not going to stop working, irrespective of whether you have an access plan or whether you have a medical condition. Unfortunately, the way that we have to design the course to meet that graduate quality, the simulation will roll on, and it's just like in real world. So you need to factor in for that early. If you've got circumstances that will impede your ability to be able to write the marketing plan, then you need to start now, start early. Because if you leave it to the last minute, and what will happen is that decision 6 will roll over. So if you have a look at your marketing plan, if you go into interpretive, you will see that the simulation will freeze until Friday the 8th of May. On Saturday the 9th of May, which is basically week 9 tutorial when we're back in week 9 of the course, after the study period break, if you don't hand up your marketing plan at the beginning by Monday the 4th of May, you're going to not only impede your own timelines, but you will also impede the timelines for your fellow members in your team, and that creates an unfair workload situation. So if you can't commit to getting your marketing plan in on time, irrespective of your situation, then you will impede not only your own timeline for your marketing plan, but also that of your fellow peers, because round six decisions are due in week 6. Now, the good news to that, on a positive note, when you're writing your marketing plan for 6, 7, and 8, you're actually already going through the process of what decisions do I need to, what objectives do I need to set, and what decisions do I need to make and take in StratSim for years 6, 7, and 8. So ultimately, the process of work has already been done for you. So in week 6, it's just a matter of inputting in that result, because it's been part of the process of section 4 of your marketing plan. But what becomes unfair is that you bottleneck your workload until close to that time, and I'm reinforcing this because every study period we have students that will be in that boat, and you will ask for an extension and you will be penalized accordingly, because if you look at the real business and marketing environment, when there's a tender and there's a deadline, there's no excuse. If you don't submit on time, you will miss out on that tender. And likewise in this situation, if you don't hand up your marketing plan by Monday the 4th of May, on that Sat, then one is you're going to inhibit your team, because that week your team are getting together to make decisions for year 6 and yours won't be ready. And then on Saturday the 9th of May, the simulation rolls over, so we will already have results for year 6. So what is the point of writing a 3-year marketing plan, which includes year 6, 7, and 8, if yours is already going to be rolled over if you ask for that extension? So an extension is possible, but your grade will be impeded because you're producing something that's not what the employer is asking for. We're asking for a 3-year plan. So if you miss out on year 6, it will inhibit your grade, because you're not handing up the quality of work of what is being asked in the marking rubrics. All right, guys, so I'm letting you know that now, because from now until the due date of the 4th of May, there's still nearly a month to go. But don't use that as complacency, because this is a big project. Writing up a marketing plan takes many days of analyzing the data, and then to sort it into a summary, and then to synthesize results for it. So it will take a lot of effort on your part to start the process early with the discipline that you need to get this job complete, and submitting it to the link which is on the course website under assignments. So marketing plan due by 9 p.m. on the 4th of May, and what we're going to do today now is cover section 4 and 5. So I will cover section 4 and 5, which is the synthesis process of what to include in your marketing plan to write up, now that we are assuming you've analyzed all the data that you have for your own individual product for years 1 and 5. With a corporate strategic focus, you will receive the feedback back for that within the next 24 hours. And our expectation is this week, you take the opportunity just to update. You can either update it yourself, relevant to your product, or you can update it with the team so that the timing of what you set is still valid. So there's no point in putting in a corporate strategic focus if at the beginning you only set a time frame to years 2, 3, 4, or 5, because those years now have already happened. What you're going to do is extrapolate that out to make sure that it's still time relevant. So remember the SMART objectives, making sure that the key performance indicator specific from what you did in year 2. For your corporate strategic focus, ask the team, is that key performance indicator still the valid one for our organization? Is it still relevant? Is it still important and significant that we still put our focus and priority on it? So that's the specificity of the key performance indicator. Is it still measurable? So you need to start numeral or starting number and an ending number, so that you can actually see the progress of performance. Attainable, relevant, and particularly time framed. So in time framing, it means that this marketing plan is going until year 8. So your corporate strategic focus within context of the company also needs to set those upper limits accordingly, because you'll find that you'll need to rely on them when it comes down to this section in section 4 of making recommendations and decisions for your product level, but within the limits of the company's resources, because you can't make wishful thinking decisions and recommendations that exceed the capacity of the organization or the resources of the organization. That just won't be achievable, and it means that you're once again possibly making guesses. The best is confident guesses, but ultimately they are not, it's quite misleading, because you're not making actionable decisions in context of the limits of your organization. So where do we want to go from here in terms of your product? You've got 5 years worth of decision making. For those that are new product marketing managers, you may have only had 1 to 2 years worth of your product being on the market, but 1 or 2 years is actually still decent longitudinal data. It's not like the 5 years that others have got in order to be able to derive up their systematic patterns in their graph, but if you think about the real world industry in banking and finance, they only ask for your last 2 years worth of financial performance in order to determine whether they're going to lend you money or not. So even 2 years worth of results is data that's better than no data. So you're not making just confident guesses. You're still going to rely on the historic results, that reflective thinking, what's happened, and then having a critical lens on going forward. What do you think is going to unveil itself based on the facts of the past? And then how are you going to get there? How are you going to achieve for year 6, 7, and 8? You need to look at your product strategy, which is ISSQs. And one point of feedback that I also have as well is when I was talking to students last week, I've realized that some of you are still not undertaking enough primary research to understand upgrades that are required for your product bundle so that it best matches the microsegment's needs. So please don't be shy of using market research, because this is going to be a pivotal part of your industry experience when you go in and work for marketing, especially if you want to be looking at higher level jobs where it requires strategic thinking. The low-level marketing jobs going forward are going to be very replaceable, because AI is going to be much more cost-efficient for an organization than yourself. So you need to be thinking at the strategic level here. And when you're looking at the strategic level, you need access to quality information. And that comes from market research, which means that if you don't understand how to do those market research in the tab of Stratsim called not only focus groups and conceptual mapping, but also conjoint analysis, because that helps you be able to really fine-tune and get the product bundle as best as possible to meet the likability of the consumer group that your product is targeting. So you're producing a product bundle that on average overall, one is that it needs to meet your profitability, which is your product contribution margin. So you're not giving away your product, but 2 is that it's able to achieve the highest possible price to add value to those consumers that you're serving. That's so important in order to formulate in your product strategy with your interior, styling, safety, and quality. How do you best bundle it that's going to come at the lowest cost to your organization, maximum value to the consumers, and also charging them at the highest possible price without losing too many customers? It's a balancing game, and there's no crystal ball, and there's no artificial intelligence that will be able to predict this for anyone. So therefore, it's really important that you become that skilled entrepreneur, business and marketer that's able to best forecast better than your competition. And then you've got your communication strategy, which is looking at what else do you need to get for salience of your product brand. So this is the product. This is not about the company anymore. It's about how do you ask for resources from your organization to continue to invest in your vehicle, whether that's the Alpha or the eFizz or the new vehicle, the Dynamo that you've launched, or the Kamini. Whatever the product brand is that you're managing, that's what this communication strategy is talking about. How do you build up those mental cues so that your brand as a car brand becomes most salient to that micro segment when they're in the market for that vehicle class? And when you look at distribution strategy, so formulating your north, east, south, and west, and having a think about the reach of that. So are you more so smart targeting, particularly if you've got luxury brands, are you smart targeting those areas or geographic boundaries that are already doing well with your product? Or are you looking at a mass marketing approach across all four geographic north, south, east, and west? And there are reports that you can buy which inform you which areas are doing better than others. Those reports that you order and pay for need to inform your decision making, because that is the business rationale that's justifying your results. Also thinking about your pricing strategy. Once again, with any of this, it's really important to lean into the content of the resources of the course through webinar, I think it was webinar 3 that Dr. Stephen Dunn talked about different levels of pricing strategy. What's different between your marketing plan and those that are produced from other universities is that you have received the delivery of content from a pricing expert. Dr. Stephen Dunn is a pricing expert. Globally, he presents about the best strategies and the thought processes behind pricing. So using the terminology of even what he presents and integrating that into your marketing plan makes your marketing plan more professional, and it also sets it apart from those other generic business and marketing reports in industry. That's what makes you a graduate, because you're using the right terms in order to supplement or complement the decisions that you're making the recommendations for. So is it a penetration pricing strategy? Have you used a skimming pricing strategy? What recommendation for years 6, 7, and 8? And it's not just talking about what you've already done, because what you've already done with pricing should have already been addressed in your situation analysis. Years 6, 7, and 8 is purely forward thinking. A plan is something that yet hasn't happened. You're looking at the future. All right, so everything in context of this document that's going to unfold, anything that's happened in the past sits in situation analysis. That gets summarized in the SWOT. That's like the borderline of like the past. We're going to use the past to understand our current situation so that we are planning for the future. Anything from section 4 onwards is purely forward thinking. It's planning for your product's profit or product contribution margin for years 6, 7, and 8. That's what the markers will be looking at, is your ability to be able to project, predict, make informed recommendations about year 6, 7, and 8 for your product strategy, your promotion or communication strategy, your distribution or physical availability strategy, your pricing strategy, and all 4 of those 4 Ps need to sit under the banner of your organizational resources. Now, there are teams that are operating with teams of 2, and they're doing quite well as well, but they also may want to include in their organizational resources their people limitations. So understanding that the pure focus of your marketing plan is on one product, that's what your focus is on. Don't divert yourself out and talk about new products or other products if that is not your area. You focus on your product. For example, within context of this course, my product is integrated marketing. I don't go into spending too much of the time and resources talking about any other products within the program. The focus for you with this marketing plan you are graded on is your own individual product. The only part that may be to do with the company is the corporate strategic focus and also an appreciation that the recommendations that you're making need to be informed within the caps or the limits of the organizational resources so that it doesn't become misleading and not achievable. And then plotting that out in terms of an implementation plan or a timeline. There are some organizations that call this the Gantt chart. Okay, all of these need to be factored in to be considered as part of when is it going to happen. So what I might do there is take a pause and all of those things that I've just explained is now visually in the form of slides for you. So the 4 Ps within context of the organizational resources. Then I go through and explain how other teams or how other product marketing managers have presented their work as an example for you. But once again, when I give you an example, our expectation is that you're going to use this as part of past data and actually present something even much better. So these examples that I'm providing to you are worth base level passes and credits. You can design something that which illustrates your results in terms of what you're recommending for years 6, 7, and 8, possibly even better than this. Now, some of these other former product marketing managers have gone longer than year 8. We used to have study periods where they did double decision rounds more often. And therefore, some of them, the examples, you'll see that it might go into year 10. Yours is only up to years 8. All right. So the example of making realistic recommendations and where they're going to make it, and then plotting their product level within context of the corporate level. Now, what I want to do is then just go into section 5 and finish off on the note of with regards to forecasting. So section 5 is focused on the financial or the monetary gains of your product and what its contribution margin in terms of sales revenue to the organization. Because what we're doing is you're going to, once again, in your situation analysis, there should have been a reflection that you would have already looked at the sales results, both the sales revenue in dollar terms or unit terms, plus also the contribution margin. Because being big in terms of sales volume or market share does not equate to financial healthiness. Financial healthiness is the bloodline that keeps you employed, that keeps all the other expenses paid for, that enables an organization to grow, that enables an organization to pay off its bank loan, that enables an organization to be paying dividends to its shareholders. So an understanding of how your product in context of sales, which can be in units or dollars, has performed. What margin has it made? So there is a tab within the products that you can go into to continually to monitor your own individual product each week. Now, there will be periods where it will go down because that's the natural stochastic dynamic market environment that you're operating in. Consumers will buy in peaks and troughs, but overall you're looking at an overall trend. Like, are you still making a margin for the organization? And that margin of your product, how does it compare with the other products in the category? So like when I'm running integrated marketing as an example, I can't control the number of students in this particular cohort, but over time, over 3 study periods or 4 semesters and 5 semesters and 6 semesters, it enables me to be able to grab an average so that helps me plan for the future. I then also have other courses by other other course coordinators that I can also use as a benchmark to compare with. That's what you're doing here with your own product. When you're monitoring your product contribution margin, if it goes down, what you just really want to understand is what is going on. And as long as you've got a reason to explain why it might be going down in a particular period, possibly the micro segment has changed preferences and they're starting to lean more towards a new product that's just entered the market, or the price of gasoline's gone up, so they're going to find an alternative substitute in the AEV vehicle. If I just pause there for a moment and take you to the real world. Now, this is the real world where we know that currently every country and every consumer is struggling if they have a diesel-powered vehicle. And myself, I'm included in that. So there is all of a sudden, within the last 3 months with this war that's broken out in the Middle East, it's now caused the change in demand for alternative energy vehicles or electric vehicles. The sales of alternative energy vehicles, the sales of substitutes for transportation has all of a sudden increased, and this is possibly something that 12 months ago most people, suppliers, consumers, government didn't predict. All right, so within context, if I bring that back for your understanding, what it means is because the price of, say, diesel is there is a concern or a fear that it's going to continue to keep going up to come at a level that becomes unaffordable for transportation. In context of the Australian market, I can say that there's now a strong hike in the demand for electric vehicles or solar-powered vehicles. These are things that would have, or products that possibly would not have been in such high demand 12 months ago, because no one predicted that there was going to be an outbreak of a war in the Middle East as such. So it's not just that. If you can't afford to switch your vehicle from a diesel-powered one to an electric-powered one right now, then there are other substitute methods that the government have intervened with, or where the consumers have just decided to change preferences, and rather than drive to work or drive to where they need to get from point A to point B, they're catching public transport. Government have come in to now offer multiple states free public transportation for its residents or its citizens, and you can see within context. So if I pause before to give you context of the real world situation, now bring you back into the simulation. This is going to be something that you need to think about as well in what's happened with your product in terms of its sales and its contribution margin in the last 5 years, and then extrapolate and predict what's going to happen in years 6, 7, and 8, which are years that have not yet happened. And it is part of your responsibility as a marketer, part of your corporate social responsibility to be to have that strong moral compass that when you're working for an organization, one of your main criteria is to improve or defend the product contribution margin for the products that you've been employed to look after or grow. Okay, so it's one of the most basic elements of the corporate social responsibility of us as marketers is to ensure profitability for the brand that we are managing on behalf of our employer. So there are also texts that you can read about how to best forecast or how to take a real quantitative thought process to make your forecast as predictable as possible. Now, when you're thinking, my God, it's so hard to predict, I can't tell the future, once again, this requires you to think about, you as a graduate of business and marketing management in the College of Business and Law with Adelaide University, how do you lean into a problem? When you've got a problem, it's not a matter of running away from it. How do you lean into it with the best possible resources that you have in order to fix it as best you can? Because that is your only excuse to defend your business rationale in any context to add value to the person that you're working for or the consumers that you're serving. Because we can also see other disciplines that are probably, there was one point in time that those disciplines would have been less able to predict than business and marketing. But we know now that we have predictability tools for the weather. You know, when you look at the Bureau of Media Statistics, you can see, or the Bureau of Meteorology, you can see possibly, not 100%, but it's very accurate whether tomorrow, is it going to be sunny, is it going to be raining? And obviously, you can't control the weather for tomorrow, but knowing the predictability of what the Bureau of Meteorology informs, you can be most prepared by bringing warmer clothes, wearing lighter clothes, bringing a hat, putting on sunscreen, bringing an umbrella, etc. Those things are within your control to best manage the situation, knowing a future that has not yet happened. Guys, that is exactly what you're doing with business and marketing planning. So if there are disciplines like the weather that are actually, how do we predict that? Then think back in terms of business and marketing context. It actually shouldn't be more difficult because you've got access to up to 5 years worth of historic data that it's happened. This is not something that's new to you anymore. Lean into the comfort of knowing that you've tried it before, and how, using what you know so far, how do you best be able to go forward into the future? And if you're still feeling confused or not confident, then it's on you to take the responsibility to access the secondary information and resources like any of the other 100 students in this course, and make sure that you equip yourself to the best that you can so that you're ready to give the most informed recommendations as possible for Section 4 about your product. Okay, because the only expectation we can have on you is to do the best that you can relative to the other students in the same cohort. Same with the area of medicine, sports, and even political elections. They all have forecasting abilities now based on past performance and the actions of the past to predict the future. That's what you have as well within context of you drove that data in the simulation. Whether you were an expert or you were in learning mode or your competition were very active, dynamic and stochastic, unpredictable, or whether they were very deterministic and planned, you have access to that data to convert it to information through your synthesis process to now make the best informed recommendations for year 6, 7 and 8. So let's take an example, and this is where I'm going to end today's webinar. So if you've got this type of graph that you've generated, and please generate your own graph. Do not just cut and paste from StratSim, because that's only going to earn you about a pass level. That is someone else's automated graph. That is produced by artificial intelligence. And one of the things that, once again, we are really trying to help you be able to do is pull upon elements of comparison so that when you draw up the graph that you want to represent, it is meaningful. It's not just data that's spat out from StratSim. It's meaningful because you want to compare between two elements where you're trying to demonstrate a systematic pattern. So if, for example, over the last 5 years, you've observed sales volume and over time it's been going like this, then realistically you can project that it's possibly going to continue to keep going up this way, right? That's not a wrong forecast to make, but it's pretty reasonable and common sense approach based on the historic data that you've got access to. But don't forget that as an informed business and marketing graduate, that you understand that every product and service that exists in this world, including our own life, has a product life cycle. It means it will get to a maximum point of saturation, the point of diminishing returns, whereby every dollar that you invest into that product, it will not achieve the same rate of return. So over time, there will be forces that will pull upon the rate of return of any product or sales, and it will cause the point of diminishing returns. So at that point in time, you're going to get, for every dollar that you're investing, for each hour that you spend, the return won't be as effective as what it was during the maturity stage of growth for that particular product. Okay, very similar to our life. So when we get to a point where we might reach maturity age, 50s and 60s on average, for the energy that we output after the age of 50 and 60, the effectiveness of the outcome or the result may not be the same as when our energy levels were in the 20s and 30s period. It's very similar to, if you don't believe in the natural phenomenon of this type of pattern, is to look at a hose. If you're holding a hose and you're spraying the water projection up, so like the trajectory of this going up, yes, the reality is that it's likely to go up, but it won't go up and up and up forever. It's not going to reach heaven. It's not going to reach the sky. There will be a point when there will be wind forces, air pressure, the gravity, 9.8 meters per second, pulling that force down, and you'll see that the water will bend parabolically and still shape itself in terms of diminishing returns. That's the same effect you're going to get for the sales of your product, and possibly similar to product contribution margin. Likewise, if you've observed that since the start that you've had your product, and over the last 5 years there's been a trajectory of decrease in product contribution margin, well, then it's very unrealistic to make recommendations that all of a sudden, without major change, that the product is going to go up and up and up, because that will not get you a pass for your marketing plan. The marketing plan has to be realistic. If it's an end game strategy for a product, a liquidation strategy for a product, a product that is reaching the point of becoming a dog quadrant in the Boston Consulting Group matrix, you need to treat it accordingly and make the informed integrity recommendations appropriately, so that your company, the brand, the product brand, has the informed suggestions in place by yourself to know how to exit that market with that particular product that possibly is going to go down and down and down. How do you exit that product out so that before it lands and becomes a problem in the dog quadrant, that you've reinvested back into it, you've done minor and major. Maybe if minor upgrades are causing it to go down, down, down like this, it's just putting a band-aid on the solution, then you may need to do a major upgrade and revamp it back up so that it goes back up into the problem child quadrant again, and therefore having the opportunity to seize more market growth. All right. Now, on the two polar extremes, so one is you've got extrapolation, which is going up, and then the other end, which is the decrease or diminishing returns of your product. What if you've had results like this, which is where it's been very unstable and very unpredictable? And if you've had something like this, then it's a case of doing the best that you can to rationalize what's happened in terms of the changes. Once again, making an informed recommendation is better than making a confident guess. So what you can do with here is you can decide within context and scope of when you're forecasting, is to say, there was this period where I just forgot to put in my decisions. So for those rounds, this normally wouldn't have happened, but as a result of human error, I didn't input the decisions. And then therefore you can see that what's happened is, when I did input the decisions, my sales were going up, and then the competitors started to come in and whatnot. You can see there's action. But during this period, which is around period 2, or when it was the double decision round, I just completely forgot that there was a double decision round on the Wednesday. So therefore it was an extraordinary error that would not usually occur. And accordingly, what I'm going to do is, to make my informed recommendations, I'm going to take that data out so that you only scope your data within context of the actual periods of realistic results. So that means that your projections are as relevant and as truthful or as integral as possible. And once again, when we're making projections for the future, you have to think about rubbish in means rubbish out. So if you're putting in there data that really hasn't been thought through in terms of some of the results of human error, other elements that could have been completely outside of your control, but if you know that they're once off, then possibly that data could skew your forecasting. So it's quite okay to explain and rationalize why you need to remove it. Okay, so I won't read through this. You can read this one and ask me any questions on the course notice board in your own time with regards to the extrapolation methods. There's different methods here of explaining to you how you can best predict your sales and your product contribution margin for years 6, 7, and 8 using either the additive composition method or the multiplication decomposition method. Or your own method, whatever method you've learned in your program and degree so far, that you can lean on that one and what you've done in the first 5 rounds so far in terms of prediction and learning from that to make the best forecast as possible for years 6, 7, and 8 as a result of looking what's happened, what market trends have you noticed, what are you going to do, and then ultimately, what's your competition going to do? Because they're the parts that certainly will affect year 6, 7, and 8. That submission articulated in the form of a marketing plan before the 4th of May is extremely important. Any extension required on that will impede the quality of content that you will be submitting, and accordingly it will reflect in your grade accordingly. So it is a 3-year marketing plan on years 6, 7, and 8, and none of those years have happened yet because we're planning for the future. All right, everyone, I'll leave it there with you. I do really look forward to as many of you as possible taking advantage of this opportunity. It's very once off for a CEO who is going to dedicate his time to come back and invest in our students, because multiple of his employees have been our students from this course, in terms of how you can increase your network, enhance, lean into your attributes, and be able to sell yourself so that you are best available in the industry, in the market. Can't tell you how important it is that you come at your best to sell your own personal brand, taking advantage of that opportunity this Wednesday in room JS411, and that's this Wednesday in week 8. Thereafter, I wish you a really relaxing but productive mid-break so that you're ready and coming back in week 9 so that then we can really power on and work through the last leg, the last 100 meters of this race, which is to put together our team presentation. All right, everyone, have a really good break, and I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible on Wednesday at 12:15 in room JS411. Bye for now.